Welcome to Swiss Holistic Institute, inviting you to this video podcast series on spiritual elderhood with Bob Weathers and Thomas Rüedi. Today's issue is the knowing field.
Tomas, you and I were just discussing the technology of how to speak to one another right now. And one of the general attitudes towards the elderly, at least here in the United States, and I imagine in Europe as well, is that somehow or another we don't know how to handle technology. The assumption is that we're obsolete. And I respect very much the fact that you and I both care about getting the word out there, that it requires for us to be at least somewhat aware of technology. I see your beautiful posters behind you. Technology created those. You've taken the initiative to record this. And I remember starting at the university all those years ago, and there being older faculty that refused to update to the new technology. At that point, it was word processors. They were just going to stay with typewriters. They weren't going to do computers. And here we are all these years later working with computers and doing the best we can. And I think that's part of the responsibility that falls on us as elders, is to do what we can to make sure that we stay legitimate within reason. I mean, it's just within reason, but this is a good example. We're able to get the word out because you've led the way with the technology, and we're both on computers and we're half a world apart from each other. So only technology makes that possible. So anyway, that's an opening thought.
Yeah, thank you. I think this is, in my view is, looking out of my elder's perspective, I would say there's lots of technology that are for getting some truth and wisdom quite useless, no?
Yeah. Yes.
And I think many of us, especially younger people, are quite involved in all kind of technologies and have a hard time to validate them, to see what, do we have to go with everything, or do we, I mean, one thing is, do we go with everything, or do we go with certain things to certain times, and certain times we are sitting into the woods and hearing nothing, just birds beeping, no?
Last night I went with my wife on a walk through the park, and she was commenting on what a relief it is to have this, which is a cell phone, have that put away. So on Sundays, for example, we typically stay away from technology. And during the week, like right now, I don't have my phone on. I won't look at it most of the day. I'm in meetings today. I could look at it between meetings, but soon enough, I'm going so fast that I'm of no use to anybody. So I really take to heart what you're saying. It requires being selective about when I use technology, when it serves, like you said, our goals, and when it doesn't serve, to be discerning and to say, not for now. No, I'm not going to do that.
Yes, I think on one hand, we as elders are somehow invited and to work with these kind of technologies, to get in contact with them, to stay open. And this is a good example here to how technology can bring a lot of fortune and a lot of certain kind of wisdom and on kind of channels that people people know and people like to see, especially younger people.
Yeah, yeah. I really like what you're saying. It makes me think that you and I, as elders, and especially when we're talking about spiritual eldership, is that we're also required to be critical of cultural trends that don't serve spiritual growth, much less transformation. And so it's holding both of those together. On the one hand, some healthy respect for the value of technology. I was thinking of the book that you've just written.
No.
Without technology, the book wouldn't reach the audiences it reaches. And so for that, we can be grateful. But at the same time, in fact, your book, I'm looking over your right shoulder, your book is talking about awakening to a holistic spirituality.
Yeah.
That means being willing to be critical of contemporary culture when necessary. I know that you are, and you know I'm committed to that as well, that we just don't fall in line and then forfeit what we might contribute as elders.
Yes, and I think what is important to me in my book is to bring together a holistic worldview with holistic spirituality. That holistic worldview means, where can we find within these structures we live in, where can we find truth and wisdom inside that kind of world we live in? And I think so. When we look at technology, I think there's lots of rubbish going on there. There's lots of confusion. There's lots of people getting manipulated to do things they originally don't want to, and it's good to have a differentiated view on all these kind of technologies, even though they might be really helpful, like computers too.
Yeah. Something I really appreciate about your book, Tomas, is how you draw on indigenous traditions. For example, you refer throughout your book to Aboriginal cultures, that there are values there that we've lost or sacrificed in contemporary culture that we would do well to draw on them again. And I think your book is an incredibly modern perspective in terms of all that it integrates, but it also is fully respectful of our ancestors that precede us. And makes me think of it as that we could almost use that as a litmus test. Is this technology serving that kind of deep Aboriginal or indigenous perspective or heart? And in many ways it doesn't. How fast we move, how disconnected we are, how obsessed we are by looking at screens and not looking into the eyes of our fellow human beings, or for that matter, our furry friends, and all of that. So you do a wonderful job in your book. I would recommend anybody to review it in this spirit, is that it's a critique of kind of an unthinking acceptance and embracing of what the contemporary world would sell us through commercial advertising. And I think it's a necessary critique.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's in this view of my book, I would say it's important that as good as we can, we know how to start and our computer, and how to manage to have a Zoom talk like we have at the moment. At the same time, we should be able to walk out into the woods and have a fire lighted, without just burning the whole woods, without using any kind of toxic stuff. I think to have the full range of possibilities are what we are supposed to live as human beings. I think we should be able to do both. Like something we do regularly, and we know how to do, and seemingly the kind of polarity I think in the middle of this polarity we will find wisdom.
It's a beautiful way to describe it. Tomas, I have a confession to make, and it's an example of a failure of this. I'm just going to speak of this morning. As I'm listening to you, I'm aware that my goal this morning was to go out into the woods, so to speak. I go for an early morning swim, as you know. There's a local community pool. It's beautiful. It's in the woods. It's really quite beautiful.
Oh,
And
wow.
before that, I usually get up for about an hour of quiet time, of quiet reading and reflection and some journaling. And I made a mistake this morning, and I do it occasionally, and I get scolded when I do it. I got up this morning and I opened up my email, which is a no-no around this for me.
I see.
And as I told you before we started today, I had emails which required meetings and all kinds of things today. And I could have gotten to that after I went into the woods, so to speak, after I went swimming, but I got into that before. And I was telling my wife, Colleen, as we were driving up the road to the pool, that I was all frazzled. I had brought on anxiety on myself, and she knows because she has the same value, that if once we go into technology, in this case, emails, then kind of all is lost. I've lost my center of gravity. And so it's a reminder for me not to do that tomorrow. And so I want to admit that I fouled up today, and I don't like how it feels. There's plenty of work today in any given day. Why would I impinge on my morning time? And the truth is that anxiety stayed with me. And so it means that I was able to enjoy the birds and the trees far less today because I had this layer of anxiety, and I brought it on myself. No one told me to open up my emails. I did it. So I know better than that. And I want to confess that it's challenging to hold these polarities. We're in the world, but at the same time, to not be of the world or to not be totally given over to it. And this morning, I'm going to have to course correct because this morning I made a mistake, and I'm feeling the consequences of it.
Yeah, I mean, so and I think it's important to say that going on the path into elderhood is not to be perfect, not to be something special, something, we stay human beings, and we do things we originally don't want to do. But I think what elders, probably the ones I would prefer to see the elders that recognize, soon, stop it soon, and go back to what, the healthy part, because I think we as elders, we know all of these kind of paths in any way. So I think that's part of the elderhood, because we have done all mistakes you can ever do, and we have the expertise and the experience and the kind of little wisdom we have is coming out of all of these kind of mistakes, and on the other hand, having some peak experiences somewhere, out in nature or in front of a computer or wherever. So we have all these informations, and I think this is important.
Yeah, I like how you're talking about a balanced perspective. Let me respond to you, because you've raised several points that are really of interest to me. One is that in the past, this is the truth, in the past I might have gone for weeks or months sacrificing the forest by virtue of being hypnotized by, I don't want to blame technology. It could be anything that would distract me from being present in whatever circumstance. So this morning will be one morning, and chances are very strong is that I'll remember this tomorrow morning. That's an incredible change for me, to move from just being hypnotized kind of on automatic pilot for weeks or months at a time to now today I lost my orientation. So that's one piece, is to acknowledge that, first of all, that I continue to learn and I make mistakes because I'm a human being, but that the mistakes are less long-lived, and I'm grateful for that. That comes with maturity, I think, and a lot of learning through mistakes. There's a second piece that you said, it's implied in this, is even though I confessed it to you that I made a mistake this morning, in the past I would have beaten myself up, like whipped myself like a flagellant. And I don't do that. I can be frustrated, but there's not shame attached to it. It's like, no, let's just learn from that. And so in the past, I would say, well, you're really screwed up here, Bob. And then that would make me more likely to be unconscious. And because we've talked so much about shame and healing, is that I can still be vulnerable to it, but it's far, far less of the time. And so this experience today is more frustrating to me, but I don't feel bad because I learned from today. And tomorrow will very likely be different. And so we're in no way encouraging our audience to go into feeling shame. You know that I've set very high expectations in my life and rarely reach them. That's not a human, there's no kindness in that. That's not a human set of goals. That's gradually shifting to where when I foul up and I made a mistake this morning, it's not the end of the world. And I can share it with you. You know what's odd, Tomas? That in the past, when I would make a mistake, I would feel such shame around it that I couldn't confess it to you. I couldn't confess it to a friend. So there's been a shift where I can bring it to you. We can laugh about it. We can cry about it. And then we move on.
Yeah. I think what is important in elderhood, I think it is really important to do the homework, getting a little bit closer to truth and a certain wisdom is to learn out of all these experiences, and on the other hand, I think to get closer to a certain kind of wisdom means to recognize that a part of us, as you know, I call it the body house,
Yes, I love
body
that
house
term.
with its components, is stuck on this world, belongs to this world. So this is the one that is doing these kind of experiences, or somehow needing to do it again and again. So it's it's out of this view saying we are, as spiritual beings, we are living in our body houses. We live in these body houses, and there's no way to get out either, or we die, so it's or we might have some really strong spiritual experiences that takes us out, but finally we are going, we after any meditation we are finding us back in our body house, to standing up and walking out into our days.
Yeah. I love your image of the body house. We've probably shared this before, and you might have actually written it in your book, but when you share that term right now, that beautiful poem by Rüedi comes to mind that starts off, "This being human is a guest house, every morning a new arrival." Boy, isn't that the truth?
Yeah.
But even the guest house and what you call a body house, this morning was a body house. It was like this body did what it did, and I can either choose to learn from it, which is to keep heading in the right direction, or I can go into shame or deny it. I can pretend like it didn't happen, or I can just identify with it and just keep doing it, and ignore the forest. I prefer to enjoy the forest. And this morning was a reminder of the frailty of the body house that I am.
Yeah, I see. Yeah. So it's nice to have these different kind of deeper views to look on our world and our being. And I think what I'm really interested in is to bring these parts of us together. So it's as it is in my book saying, my new book saying, it's bringing together, we call minor polarities, means just the polarities within our world we live in, like it's cold or hot, or dark and bright, and yin and yang. So it's I'm sure that where these polarities meet, there is that's what the book is about, saying that there is relative wisdom. This is not enough, so we have to balance it with the absolutes and with that spiritual being. We are, as I've written it, like saying we are a spark of this huge space. And this spark is nothing else than the space itself. And so it's like a microcosm, what we are, and we can experience all these kind of levels on it.
Yeah. I like all that you just said. You started off by talking about how meaningful it can be just to be able to have these deeper conversations. And it makes me think, and I'll say this to anybody that's viewing our conversation today, is that you and I have shared these over the last several years, is that it's been such a joy to me to have such a deep level dialogue with you ongoing. And it really doesn't matter where we enter. We always go into a reflective, sincere, open-hearted place. I learned so much from you. It's a joy to share with you. And I think this is part of spiritual elderhood, is to find colleagues, partners along the way, as well as to seek mentors. You and I have both had very significant mentors that represent maybe the generation before us. And here we are now ourselves moving into elderhood. And so the deepening that's allowed by this kind of relationship, I would wish it for every single participant in our podcast series here, that you might have what Tomas and I've shared for years and years. In fact, you and I get to model, in a sense, Tomas, for those that view what's possible in conversation. We didn't script this. This is completely spontaneous. It was born out of our opening comments about just computers, and here we are.
Yeah, I mean, it's great. It's somehow what we found out in all these years, or all these hours we have been communicating to each other, is there is a kind of space opening. There is kind of field, I would say some kind of knowing field that that is created by the two of us. So expressing in my book, it's just a play, when the absolute is, creating something, incarnating something. It can be reflected on its own, or it can be reflected in two people, talking to one another, or to exchanging one another. So there is this deep wisdom talking to itself, and
Yes.
and I think all what we need to do is just to open ourselves and our hearts, that this comes through us,
Yeah. I want to say something to our viewers. You just inspired me, Tomas, is that I don't know that you would bring this up necessarily, but I know that when you compose poetry, and your poetry is beautiful, that you write in English.
Yeah.
I think predominantly English. And what I want to say is that when you speak, you have the kindness to speak English with me, because your first language is German, I presume. And though I studied German 50 years ago, it's not even close to being my second language. And so I'm grateful for you speaking English. But I want to say something more than just that. There was a phrase that you used right now that would not typically be used in English, except in poetry. And I want you to know, I actually have the chills in my body, because it comes up all the time as we speak. The phrase you used was, "There's a knowing field." I don't think I've ever read that in English, and it makes me wonder why I haven't. It might be in your book, because your book is translated into English, but that it would only come up in poetry. And the only reason I say poetry is because poetry in some ways speaks to the deeper truth than prose does, at least in English. So when you speak English, to me, you speak poetically, which makes every sentence of interest to me, because you're fluent, first of all, in English, but you're fluent in a kind of English that most English-speaking people aren't, which is in addition to knowing technical English, because you know it very well, is that you touch into a poetic sensibility that most English-speaking people not only don't speak, but don't even want to read. They're not even interested in reading. And so I just want to thank you for knowing field. Today, that's one of those little nuggets that I enjoy. And there's rarely a conversation without several of those nuggets where I leave and I just going, he said that just perfectly in English. and then I steal them from you because I like them so much. Knowing field will become a new term for me, thanks to you.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I think I think what I believe is very important to get into as an elder, into mystical experiences, So if we stay stuck in our intellectual minds, all of us, both of us, we are highly trained and highly, intellectually highly trained, and we stay stuck in there. It's going to be there's going to be quite a flat world and a flat existence. And in my view, the depth in a life of anybody of us, or what we experience now together with this field, is the mystical component that is beyond intellectual, and that's what I really love about spirituality, especially from Tibetan Buddhist point of view. I'm coming from this deeply cult tantrical approach that is saying it. Tantrical approach means it's experience based. Yeah. It's nothing else. And that's what I really love, because if we can balance this experience part with our intellectual knowledge and our experiences, in our body house, it's going to be quite a broad world we can talk about,
I really like you drawing attention to that. I think of my background is in mystical forms of Christianity and also Zen. And also, we both share a love for Sufism, the mystical Islam. And all of these are experiential. In fact, the experience I just had earlier that I was referencing, I didn't couch it as being a mystical experience, but when you use the term knowing field, I know that field between us. And do you remember I said my whole body has chills? My body had a response to that. That's not an intellectual thing. And so you're using that term touches into the mystical depth that we both seek. And that's really what we aim for. This is not meant to be from the top down like an intellectual thing. It's actually from the body house up is what it feels like to me. And whether it's your deep relationship to Tibetan Buddhism and Tantra, and my related deep embeddedness in particularly monastic Christianity, which is basically experiential. All of those are from the body house up, it seems like to me. When you read a book like a Christian, in the Christian tradition, if you read a book like St. John of the Cross, Dark Night of the Soul, he's not talking intellectually, he's talking completely experientially. And then you have so many references from your own experience within Tibetan Buddhism. So our wish is to stay true to the soul of these traditions, which means the mystical heart of them. And it's already happened today. As you begin to speak, you speak with depth. You speak three-dimensionally, and I'm drawn into that. And that's what I'm hoping that we can model for others.
What I believe, Bob, is this is the gift that was given to us, talking to one another, opening up another field. We could say it's something. That's why we are living. It happens by chance, but still not, because because as you remember, when I was picking you from the homepage, when I was looking for integral coaches, I was seeing your picture, and I said, "This is the guy," And I didn't know anything about, but somehow my how you would say in Christian, you would say my soul was recognizing your soul, somehow.
Yeah.
And so this is happening a lot to me, because I'm really I'm really happy to have this kind of skill, to contact with people that I can experience that it's meaningful,
Yeah, I remember that very well, Tomas. And when we met each other, it was fully mutual. It was really soul to soul, eye to eye, spirit to spirit. And I'm really grateful. I'm really grateful that you reached out. And if you hadn't, I'm hoping that I would have found you anyway.
Yeah. So that was, yeah, we might, bump into each other, walking through a forest, in one of these beautiful forests you have in America. I was glad to be there some years ago, when I was coming to see the giant trees, the sequoia trees, the sequoia forests, with this incredible smell, when you walk in this, if you get this smell and these personalities of these huge trees, you can't help feeling fine, or feeling supported, feeling loved somehow by nature.
That's so beautiful you say that. When I was reading your book those months ago, that I had such a strong response, because you feature a discussion of your experience of the sequoias there. And as I shared with you, our family grew up in Central California at the base of the Sierras, and the road to the Sequoia National Park was straight from my hometown. And in fact, as I told you, the college I went to was College of the Sequoias. And so I have in fact, I just thought of it right now. The high school I went to was Redwood High School. And in the front of the high school, they had carved out of a redwood stump a ranger, a park ranger. And the name of our teams were the Redwood Rangers. So Redwood High School, College of the Sequoias. And my mom was a member of the Sierra Club. So we spent untold hours up in the Sierras as part of the Sierra Club. I'm sure I would have run into you, Tomas.
Yeah, we would have bumped into each other there, or I would come, along there and seeing an interesting looking elderly guy sitting on a bench, and asking if is there some place left to sit, and then I would sit, and then we would just, sitting there, experiencing this incredible atmosphere, and then we might talk a little bit, and maybe that would be another kind of version. We would have been getting in touch with one another. No.
You and I've spoken of this, and you have your way of putting it. I would put it this way: is that the older I get, as I move into elderhood, the fewer and fewer coincidences I see. I really think of them the way that Carl Jung talked about synchronicity, meaningful. They're meaningful, the way they come together. And as you were speaking just now, I'll share another memory that I've never shared with you. It's never come to me this way. You know that though I grew up in Central California, I studied German in high school for 4 years. No one speaks German in Central California, so you've got to wonder, why did I study German? My teacher had spent part of the 1950s in an American military base in Landsberg, outside of München. And so I studied German we called him Herr Hayes. His last name was Hayes, Herr Hayes. but we used to drive through Herr Hayes's, his hometown was called Wood Lake, and it was on the way to camp. It was on the way to Lake Sequoia up in the Sierras, and we would go there in the summer to go to camps up there. So to think that I would be studying German for 4 years with a man whose home was on the way to Lake Sequoia, and all of that leads in. And though I can't, although you're kind, and we don't speak German together because my German is so long in the past. My love for Germany and having visited Switzerland all those years ago, I feel a deep connection to you spiritually. Though I'm basically illiterate in German, I have much respect for German culture, language, and here you are coming to the U.S. and your love for sequoias. So we're all connected in very complex ways. Sometimes it's really startling to me how life is so amazingly interwoven this way.
Yeah, thank you, Bob. So I'm just recommending to you, please, when you go to Switzerland next time, don't tell a Swiss he's German.
Okay.
He's part of the German culture.
Okay.
Then you will hear a lot of,
I'll get myself in trouble.
Indigenous Swiss German, expressions,
Yeah.
and they will try hard to give you some information about what is Swiss culture.
Please forgive me. I did not mean offense, and I understand that.
Don't worry. It has been a pleasure to see you today, and I think we will continue going on with these kind of talks and exchanges, and I'm really looking forward to continue this some days. And so thank you a lot to be there and to be together with me in this knowing field. And I will trying to take it with me for a while and enjoy it.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much, Tomas. This is such a pleasure. It's really a joy. This is a beautiful maiden voyage, our very first trip together in this form, and I'm really grateful for it. I'm really looking forward to wherever it may take us.